Hello and welcome to Morris Park. I'm Clyde Morris. Tonight I'm going to do a video to answer the question. The question of, I have this plant, it's thick, it has thick stems, it has spines, it looks like a cactus, so it must be a cactus. Well, unfortunately it's not that simple. There are many groups of succulents which have many different shapes and sizes. There's a mosquito there. Many shapes and sizes, including this giant here, but not of the same family. And what I'm covering here is a term called convergence, or convergent evolution. And that's where two organisms grow in similar environments, worlds away, and form the same, look very much the same. So many of our succulents that look like cactus that form, say, in South Africa, like this plant here, will look like a cactus, just like the ones that grow in the Sonora Desert in Arizona, because similar environments. And that's basically convergence. These plants take on these forms to deal with the environments, and they'll take on all kinds of forms. And like the Euphorbia seed, the Euphorbia family takes on so many different forms and it grows worldwide. The cactus family, growing pretty much within the New World, North America, South America, and Central America. And so they're limited range, but the Euphorbias go everywhere. And so do the milkweed family, the Abasinica, or what they call the dogbane family. And I'm going to discuss these three families and show you the differences. Even though there's so many other succulents to look at, I probably only have time to discuss these three and just the differences and why not all succulents are cactus. And while cactus are succulents, all succulents, not all succulents are cacti. So let's take a little trip here and take a look at some of these plants, and I'll kind of explain where they come from, what family basically, and how they form that way and why. So let's take a trip. Now first I'm going to explain a little bit about the Cactaceae, or the cactus family. Now what makes a cactus is areoles. And that's these little organs here that are filled with felt, spines, fur, and so forth. And this is where cacti do all their growing pretty much. It's from these areoles. These areoles produce spines, they produce the felt, they produce flowers, branches and offsets, and their seed. Now some, like the mammillarias, are very different because their tubercles with the spines are right on top there, as you can see, but the flowers and the branches don't come from these. They come in between. So they got to have, these mammillarias have like secondary areoles, and that's where the flowers and so forth are produced. You can see some of the dead flowers kind of in there and all, where they grew out, and that's also where their branches are produced, is in between the main areoles with the spines. This one here, or this one here. Or you can see it more evident on this plant here. This is kind of an enormous plant, has no spines, but you can see where everything happens. Now many of these succulents come in a vast range of shapes, as you can see. They can be columnar, or they can be rounded, clustering. See that? Or cylindrical, like this Cephalosarius. And if you look real close on the Cephalosarius, we can dig through there, you can actually see the areoles under there that bear the spines and all this hair. Now I'm petting this thing down like this and it's not sticking me, but if I were to grab onto that, it definitely has spines under there, and I would definitely know it. Now many of you know this plant here that I affectionately call the king, because it's the biggest potted plant I have in my greenhouse, or anywhere for that matter. But there's a difference here. This is Euphorbia Abasinica. It looks very cactiform, and I'll be using that term throughout the video, cactiform, which does not necessarily mean that it's related to a cactus in any way. It just looks like a cactus. It's not related to it, not in the same family. But this Abasinica, this Euphorbia Abasinica, you can see the thorns go right out of the stem. They don't have any areoles. There's no fuzz, fur, or anything like that. It's much like a rose. The thorns go right out of that. But looking much like this. And this is a Pseudopelosocereus azureus. It was one of the ones I forgot to put in my California Cactus Center video. That had a very long time. Oh, probably 38 years. And it's very much like this Euphorbia, except the fact that it has areoles that you see here. And all cacti have these areoles, no matter what. They all have them. No other plant possesses areoles. Now, as you see here, these are a lot of Euphorbias. And many of them are very cactiform. You see here. Look at this little Horrida polygona hybrid. And it looks much like an Echinopsis or something like that. Clustering. Maybe an Echinocereus. But it's not. This is a Euphorbia. And you can see they take on these cactiform shapes over and over. And they've done this because of convergence. They look like a cactus because they grow in a similar environment to many cacti that come from the New World. And just as an example, I lived in Tucson for a while. And Tucson's in the middle of the Sonoran Desert. And the Sonoran Desert is very rich in cacti and succulents. Same with South Africa and other parts of Africa. They're very rich in these succulents because they have similar growing conditions. And these plants have adapted to be able to take on these growing conditions. Another difference in cacti and euphorbias are the flowers. The flowers are usually quite small in euphorbias. This is a female flower of this Horrida, powder blue. And yes, unlike cactus, euphorbias might have the sexes on different plants. So one may be a female plant, or one may be a male plant, such as this Horrida. And so you need two different plants, two of these plants to make seed. And there are also ones that have flowers that have both sexes and pollinate themselves. Now you can see always the flowers are quite small on euphorbias. They're never really big, huge, showy flowers like around cactus. Cactus do have the advantage there as far as being showy. They have the beautiful flowers. Even the small flowers are quite pretty because of the petals. And euphorbias don't have this. Now here's where things can kind of get strange. Euphorbias are not just succulents. And there's one euphorbia we all know, and I'll show you that. This is a Euphorbia Pultrima. This is the poinsettia. Everybody knows the poinsettia. In the holiday season, Christmas time and all, these things are sold by the millions. World's best known euphorbia. And yes, they're in the same genus as the cactiform ones I just showed you. Same family, Euphorbiaceae, which there are many different genus in the Euphorbia family, such as this plant here. This is a Jatropha. Podogryca, I think is the species. Jatropha podogryca. Looks very different. But basically in the Euphorbia family, but not in the genus Euphorbia. This one is in the genus Euphorbia, just like our cactiform ones. Quite unusual, isn't it? Within the cactus family, you have so many different genus, and they look so similar as far as being cactiform. But in the Euphorbia genus, they range greatly in shape, size, structure, depending on what kind of environment they had to put up with. And I'll show you this here in a second. Now this is another genus in the Euphorbia family, the Euphorbiaceae. And this is a Monodenium. Now Monodenium just recently was moved to the Euphorbia family, to the Euphorbia genus. So they also call this Euphorbia now. But I always keep the Monodenium to keep them separate because they look so different and unusual from the actual Euphorbia genus, in my opinion. This is Monodenium guntheri, or Euphorbia guntheri. And you see it has kind of creeping stems and they're top of little leaves. And that's so these can kind of crawl across the ground, through the rocks, and through the brushy growth in South Africa to survive its environment. I'll show you another one. This is a Euphorbia richii variegata, a variegated euphorbia, or Monodenium. I got this plant from Daz and Edith of Cactomania. Quite a wonderful plant. See the variegation. And this one grows a little more upright. I'll show you another one. This is Monodenium Terrapodum. Much the same kind of habit as the Guntheri. Stems are a little bit smoother. The tubercles don't stick out so far. Had this one quite a long time. It's a very old plant. Got this at the LA County Arboretum Cactus and Succulent Show back in 1984. It's an old plant, but these are quite different from a lot of the other euphorbias, and they creep and crawl like caterpillars all over the place. And like this Monodenium lugarde, they tend to have these hooded flowers. Get you a good picture of one. There's little hooded flowers down there you can see. Little hoods kind of cover the actual flower. And that's common with the Monodeniums. And that's kind of why I kind of see them a little different than the actual Euphorbia genus, is that these guys have this hooded flower. Now let me show you a really cool one. Now this particular Monodenium was also sent to me by Daz and Edith of Cactomania. And as you see, it's a vine. I've got it growing on a bamboo hoop. It comes from a caudex. That's another adaptation. In a dry area, these plants, what they'll do is they'll store water down here. The vines, if need be, will die off, and this is all that'll be left in the ground during a really dry season. Quite adaptable. So if things dry out too much, this thing will just go into hiding. Like many cacti do, like many other euphorbias do, that pull themselves down on the ground. This one just kills off the top vegetation and goes into hiding for a while. And you can see these hooded flowers, like I just showed you on the lugarde. And this one rebranches the flowers. It'll bloom out, and some Monodeniums do this. They'll bloom out, and then you see they've got another pair coming out of that flower, and they just keep on growing like chains of flowers. Pretty cool plant. I've really enjoyed this one. It's been in flower almost since I planted it. When I got it growing, within the first week or so, it started showing buds, and has flowered ever since. What a great plant. What an unusual euphorbia. Now here you see this bowl of cactus here. You're saying, well, it doesn't look like euphorbias, and well, it kind of looks a little bit weedy. There's some cactus in there, a little echeveria over there, Haworthia limifolia, and the weeds. I left the weeds there on purpose so I could do this video. This is Euphorbia Maculata. This grows all across the United States. It's a little pesky weed. They grow in thick mats along the ground in poor soil areas. They are an annual euphorbia, which means they grow only from seed. They don't come back year after year from the same rootstock. And if you could look really close there, where those little teeny flowers are and seed pods are, you almost have to look with a magnifying glass. They look just like all the other euphorbia flowers and seed pods. They're a three-parted seed pod. Much like the seed pods on this Euphorbia milli tree that I've made here. Hi, Felix. My cat Felix. And these little seed pods are three-parted. All Euphorbia seed pods look like this, and it's really hard to get a focus on these little guys. But they're a three-parted seed pod, and will actually pop open and almost explode with a spring action to fling the seeds away from the plant. And all euphorbias have these. So if you want to collect seeds from euphorbias, you almost have to either glue the seed pod closed so it won't throw it out there, or put a net over or something to catch the seeds, because it'll get rid of the seeds. It'll throw them off somewhere, and you'll find them growing in something else. But yes, all euphorbias have these exploding little seed pods of three parts with a seed in each part. So they have 3 seeds apiece to every pod. Now, This is a Euphorbia Abasinica, and this is a big tree-type euphorbia, cactiform euphorbia. And this looks much like many of the cylindropunches that I used to see in Saguaro National Park when I lived in Tucson. Having these little narrow branches on top of a woody trunk, full of spines, except these aren't usually as long as the opuntia spines. But these plants evolve in similar ways. And even though these get into more of a tree than the opuntias do, still the branches are very similar in form. Very cactiform, but not a cactus. Very much a euphorbia. Also, this Euphorbia hybrid, it's Euphorbia zigzag. It's a hybrid between pseudocactus and Euphorbia grandicornis. Pseudocactus meaning fake cactus. So, not a cactus, but growing very much like a little cereus type cactus, growing branches from the base there and around on the stems. But the thorns have no areoles. It's just this continuous thorny margin going all the way down the plant. Very woody looking, and not fuzzy or felty or furry like a cactus. Now this is a little different one. These are one of our annual Euphorbias from the Ozarks. And just showing how vast the forms are. Doesn't look anything like cactus, does it? Completely different. But in the same genus as the cactiform euphorbias. They're all euphorbia. And this one looks rather like a little green poinsettia when it gets in full flower. It's just starting right now, but it doesn't get any of the colored bracts. The bracts stay actually green instead of becoming red or pink or white. But this just shows you how adaptable these things are. I mean, they grow all over the world. Wherever they are, this is a leafy kind of environment, really. As you see, we're kind of woodland. And we have some open fields and open glades and so forth. Which is why these guys kind of adapted to this situation. Very interesting. Now these are from the milkweed family, the Abasinicae. Now the Abasinicae, much like the Euphorbias, has a toxic sap, but these plants are nowhere related. These are related to the milkweeds. This is a Stapelia, and the species slips me right now, but it has little purple starfish-shaped flowers, much different than Euphorbia flowers, much different than cactus flowers. Ahernia zebrina, another one of the Abasinicae, the milkweed family. It gets kind of a starfish flower too. They call it the lifesaver plant because the middle of the flower looks like a butterscotch lifesaver sitting down in it. The other thing these plants have that are different from the Euphorbias and the cactus is these Stapeliad types have very foul-smelling flowers. Reason being, they're pollinated by flies. They adapt to everything. These plants utilize all kinds of different methods, and flies are a good method just to get around everything. If you stink like rotting flesh or garbage, like these do when they bloom, you'll get lots of pollinators, and that will be the flies. This Pellia gigantea is a good example. It gets a huge starfish-shaped flower, just like a great big starfish, same size, but smelling horrible. And that's why it's hanging outside. This is the worst smelling one of the bunch, and so I kind of give it a little air so the greenhouse won't stink so bad. But yeah, these flowers are totally different from Euphorbias, totally different from cactus, and are not related to them anyway. They just take on this cactus-like shape because of where they grow. And these are from South Africa. And no, they're not related to the Euphorbias, as I say. Totally different. And I'll actually show you some plants that get a little more familiar with ones you might have seen. Now this spiny trunk thing is a Madagascar Palm. And it is also part of this family. Only difference is the flowers smell sweet instead of really smelly, and they really look pretty. But same family. Now all the members of this family have toxin, and when you're taking cuttings from anything like this, be sure to wash your hands. They're very toxic. And if anybody knows what a Nerium oleander is, if not, you can look it up, Google it. Very toxic plant that is used as a very common landscape plant in places like Arizona and California, and Florida and places like that. It's warm. but ingesting just a small amount of it can kill you. It's really a virulent sap. I haven't heard too much on these Madagascar palms of how toxic they are, but they are toxic, and it's something to watch out for. These are the Adeniums. I'm sure you've heard of these, the desert rose. They get the fat caudex on the bottom and then grow all these little branches out, top of the leaves. And then these particular ones have pink and white flowers. Looking much the same as a Madagascar palm, just more colorful. A little tiny one there I got from Lowe's on discount. $7. Great deal. The tall one back there is a red one. It's one of the hybrids. Beautiful dark red. But part of the Abasinica, part of the milkweed family. And this is one that many people know about. I haven't got mine to bloom in a couple of years. Probably need to be repotted. They're a little tight pot. Plumeria. And this is what they make the leis or the big flower necklaces out of when you go to the Pacific Islands. They smell wonderful. I think these are originally from South America. So these kind of range all over the place as far as where they're from. Madagascar palm, big Madagascar. The Adenium being an African and Arabian Peninsula and Socotra plant. But yeah, just another one in the milkweed family. And yes, these are toxic. Now this is one of our native milkweeds here in the Ozarks. And you see they have these great big pods on them. Now in the springtime they'll get topped with some beautiful pink flowers that smell wonderful. Unlike their cousins, the Stapeliads. The pods then grow and they are filled with seeds at the bottom, and then the rest of it is floss. So when these crack open, the wind will catch them and disperse them for miles. And that's how they disperse theirs. Unlike the Euphorbias that crack their seeds apart and fling them, these actually catch the wind. And fly for miles and are dispersed to other places to grow away from the parent plant. Now this is an unusual one, and a lot of people know this one. And this is a milkweed. This is the string of hearts vine, Euphorbia woodii. It grows from these little tiny tubers that are down here. I don't know if you can see them. It's kind of getting dark out here in the greenhouse. But it's got these little tubers down here. And these actually, see there, actually are used quite common in grafting Stapeliads. As long as you leave one vine on the tuber, you can cut the top of the tuber off and actually graft plants like this to it. And other really hard to grow Stapeliads. And there's a lot of different ones out there that I can't cover because I really don't have them. But the Euphorbia tubers can actually be used as grafting stock for that. And I've seen this in a lot of old publications and so forth where they've done this. Very popular plant, another milkweed, and yes, they do get those little pods. All these plants get the little pods that crack open, and then the wind disperses them with the floss. Now, one of the questions I get a lot is another question to answer. And that is, I have this Euphorbia. I'm thinking about grafting this cactus. Can I graft the cactus to this Euphorbia? No, it won't work. These plants have to be within their same families. They are already, the ones that are related can be grafted. Ones that are not cannot. So you can't graft, say, a Stapelia to a Euphorbia. You can't graft a cactus to a Euphorbia. Nor can you graft a Euphorbia to a cactus or a Stapelia to a cactus. They have to be within the same families, such as these cacti. Euphorbias there. Several of these I've grafted myself. And have grown quite well. But as I say, you have to graft like to like. They have to be within the same family or it will not work. Must be within the same family. So, in answer to everybody's questions out there, family to family, no Euphorbias to cactus, no cactus to Euphorbias, no Stapelias to cactus, no Stapelias to Euphorbias. Have to be one-on-one, cactus to cactus, Euphorbia to Euphorbia, Stapelia to Stapelia. Now I could talk about a lot of other plant families here. There's actually quite a few I even don't have that I could show you. Now I am going to come up with another video after this one. This is part one of Convergence. And I will cover in my next video the aloes, agaves, and yuccas, and haworthias, and the like. And I'll talk about them. And most of them are within the Asparagaceae. But their types have evolved in different parts of the world and evolved different genus and different plants with similar shapes. So anyhow, stay tuned for the next video, part 2 of Convergence. This is Clyde Morris from Morris Park. I hope you have a great evening. It's getting late out here. I'm going to have to shut it off. We'll see you next time for part 2.